Here are 3 more team comps for you to try out in Unicorn Overlord. A couple of these team comps are a bit wacky but have some spicy potential. We're gonna start off with a pretty easy one to build in the early to mid game and can even evolve to be a physical variant of the 1-turn charge nuke team that was covered in my first team build video. Link in the description and on the top right widget if you are interested in that. It is a team that focuses on Hilda and Primm. Wyvern Knights, Wyvern Masters, Griffin Knights, Griffin Masters. Any flyers in this game are a bit stronger than other classes in my opinion because of several different reasons.
Oh god!
The biggest being ignoring terrain and generally having very good valor skills like Hasten Call or the Dragoon Dives. But for whatever reason, every single flyer in this game have a 2-time dodge rate versus grounded melee units, as well as having their melee physical attack be coded as range for the purposes of attacking, so that means they can skip front row and attack back row directly. Pair that up with the fact that most offensive flyers have some innate AoE attack built in already, and you have yourself a recipe for a very strong unit with high mobility, great coverage, and deceptive bulk. Hilda herself makes a great bulky frontliner with good attack, good physical defense, and good HP. We're gonna increase her bulk and damage by all the items that we have equipped on her. Her spear is amazing for her. It makes her faster, it gives her more evade, and it provides 1 extra AP. Charm of Land and Sea can be replaced by potentially stronger items if you have them or are not using them in other teams. For me personally, I don't have a lot of free damage items flowing around as my other teams are using them, so Charm of Land and Sea is a good way to increase bulk while still getting a little bit of damage in. The second accessory, the Heaven Wyvern Reins, not only gives Hilda more speed and more bulk, but it also gives her higher attack and the ability to true strike other evade tanks. And lastly, we have the Lucky Coin, an item that you can get super early on in the game, gives her crit rate and evasion just to make her all that much more powerful. The main stat we really care for is evasion, but getting the extra crit rate is nice too, allows Hilda to do more damage. And once you unlock Tempest Drive on her, that's where you're going to be getting a lot of value out of this. Tempest Drive is already really strong normally, but once Hilda gets low on health, every time Tempest Drive procs after she is at 50% HP, that attack becomes a true strike and a critical hit. And Wyvern Masters have a pretty unique row attack in a Fire Breath. It does physical damage for whatever reason, but it also inflicts burn, and that little extra stat element of damage is really nice in the mid game. When she goes down to 1 AP, she's going to be relying on the diving thrust attack, which is still really strong, especially against an intended target of cavalry units. As they can't guard against the attack does increase potency against them, and then we're not even accounting for the Wyvern Master's extra 2-time physical damage bonus versus cavalry units just innately built into their class. And then arguably the best thing about them is the deflect skill. Anytime they're going to be hit by a melee attack, they get to negate a single hit of that attack and then grant themselves plus 20 evasion that stacks. As the fight rages on, your evade is just getting higher and higher and higher and higher. It's crazy. And this pairs really well with Primm, who we're going to be using as just a typical Lyrical Wand AP generating cleric. For those of you who are not in the know, Lyrical Wand turns a bishop or a cleric into a battery. They can spend 2 AP to give another unit 1 AP. And if a stat ailment ever comes into play, we got refresh to back it up. We want this bishop to have 4 AP ASAP just because it allows them to give more AP to other characters. For the accessories, outside of getting more AP, you can put in whatever you want. In the early parts of the game, giving your Lyrical Wand cleric stuff like Acrobat Shoes to turn that PP into AP is not a bad idea. And as you build out this cleric, I would probably focus in more keeping them alive with the items. That means more bulk or immunity to certain CC so they can do their job of cleansing things. Those are the important points in a cleric. And now we're going to add in the last core to our early mid-game team. With Lisa, the Arbalist / shield shooter, we're going to be setting her to block true strike arrows from Hilda to keep her alive longer, and when that happens, Hilda will get healed as well. She makes a great backup healer if she has any leftover PP in a fight, making your Hilda team be able to go longer distances without stopping at a town or a garrison to heal. She also comes with the Toxic Bolt in the early parts of the game where poison is actually really devastating against armored units or things that she won't normally be able to damage, or Hilda would have a hard time damaging as well. If, let's say, you shoot a cleric or something and you have an enemy cover them, they'll cover it. But the quick reload after attack that happens with the shield shooter class will always hit the enemy she's targeting. Realistically, every heavy shielder can fulfill this role, but Arbalists and shield shooters are the only one with access to a crossbow, and we get a pretty cool one in the form of the Woodpecker, which is essentially a machine gun.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
For the accessories, I really like this Circon's shield for the haste and cover. This allows her to synergize with the other parts of the team that we'll cover later. But what it does is that whenever she covers a unit, it immediately makes the unit she covered have their turn taken. So if you're charging a Dragoon Dive or anything else, wink wink, then that instantly casts. This is, however, a late game shield. Beforehand, I would actually go with the Dragonbone shield you can buy in the desert because it gives you 1 extra PP. Arbalists and shield shooters are already freaking slow, so it doesn't hurt them at all to have even lower initiative. And once you start start rolling into the mid game, I would consider things that grant you immunity to stuns or freeze so that way she can cover units reliably. Fourth up is going to be our form of magic damage. In this team, while we have stat elements and physical damage, both of them are ranged, so a Vanguard can beat this pretty steadily, so we're going to want something different for the team. Whichever magic aligned unit you go with, you want to have them be able to equip those elemental conferral skills, such as the Frostbrand Tome. These tomes grant immense value when given to somebody with AoE attacks, and Hilda does have a couple of those, all the while being able to provide AoE damage of their own. For this specific scenario, my magic user is using the Ice Storm Staff, which gives us a 2 AP team-wide attack that requires 1 turn of charge time, and I did this because I wanted to see how effective it is to use this alongside that hasten cover attack, and it wasn't the greatest because there's too many targets that want the hasten covered from Lisa. Now, in a PvP scenario, it was kind of okay, but in the PvE gameplay, nothing's stopping this. They're going to be struggling so hard to hit Hilda, you're going to have such an easy time getting this blizzard off, while Hilda's just attacking like 3, 4, 5 times thanks to Primm. It's great. For the last unit, we're going to do a defensive unit. This is either going to be a Vanguard in the early to mid game, or Feather Shield / Sainted Knight in the late game. One of the biggest weaknesses for Hilda, for Wyvern Masters, is magic. The Feather Shield has Reflect Magic, which is really strong, and some magic defense up for the team, and he can also tank and cover for the backline. It's great synergy all around. Feather Shields are also considered flying armored unit, not only making him tanky, but also really evasive against grounded melee units, something that both that unit and Hilda will share, making them immensely powerful in terms of being an evade tank. For me personally, I like to diversify my weaknesses, so having 2 units extremely weak to bows is kind of something that makes me a little bit nervous. So having a Sainted Knight who can do a similar thing with the heal and the magic defense support is a great alternative option, but I gotta shill for my boy Lex real quick. His mid to late game is actually not that bad. Provoke is really good. Arrow cover is really good because remember what I said about Wyvern Knights, Wyvern Masters, Griffin Knights, and Griffin Masters being a ranged attack unit? Well, that means that arrow cover works for this, and arrow cover nullifies all damage no matter what. This makes a Vanguard extremely tanky versus flyers. As I alluded to earlier, you can also make Hilda a 1-turn charge Dragoon Dive attacking monster if you want to, and that takes a little bit more investment and you won't really be using the Wyvern Master's innate bulk and evasiveness. The next team centers around Nina and Gilbert, the Drakenhold Prince. This team focuses on making Nina the best breaker she can be, making sure that she one-shots everything and then moves on to the next target with her little AP refresh to just keep knocking people down. Gilbert helps us accomplish this with his sniping order and offensive order skills, allowing Nina to hit with a true strike and get that attack boost. The most important item to have is some kind of blind immunity. If you're in the late game, you'll have access to the Lamplight Ring, which allows your entire team to be blind immune for the entirety of the fight, but it does take up an active turn. Outside of that, you just want to make sure that Gilbert is faster than Nina, just so that way he can cast this Lamplight Ring if you have it before she goes. And for Nina, pack on as much crit and attack as possible. For her, more AP is better, allows her to use those row attacks that she has, but once she gets to 2 or 1 AP, we need to make sure that she's only using Assaulting Blow, so that way she can keep resetting. Because of Gilbert's ability to augment an entire row's attack and make them True Strike and also blindness immune, this is where the spicy third piece comes into play. We're gonna steal Rosalind from the first video and throw her in here because that makes her Elemental Roar a True Strike, unblindable damage boosted attack that can't be magic reflected, just to cover our magical nuke needs for this team. To round off the team, we're gonna add in a Sainted Knight and a Vanguard to cover ranged physical attacks and magic damage. Items for Sainted Knight can be whatever you want. I would recommend more AP and also items that give heal on active skill use, just because the row heal attack is an active skill, so they want more AP to heal more, and then they also can heal themselves when they heal others. If you already have a lot of AP on your Sainted Knight, having a shield that can give you a cover skill is also really good, as it makes your backline much harder to kill. And if Rosalind doesn't kill everything with her Elemental Roar, Nina's gonna finish the job quite easily. This last team was inspired by a comment that somebody left in my previous video. It's a great idea. It's all centered around using Yunifi's unique counterattack that hits 3 enemies. Alongside this, I'm going to add my own spice into the mix, so check it out. Yunifi herself may be thick, but she's not that thick. Her physical defense is not that great, so we're going to focus on her evasion. That means the Royal Scarf and the Lucky Coin gets a lot of mileage here. And to top it off, Yunifi's going to need as much PP as possible. Not only because of triple counter, but the Snow White strike that is a follow-up attack to anyone else attacking. This skill is honestly insane, but how disruptive it is, as it can free freeze enemies. As for the weapons she can use, her default Frostbloom bow is actually pretty good because it gives plus 20 evasion and some good crit rate. Once you upgrade to the late game, King's Bow or the Sacred Bow are both very good choices, with the King's Bow offering her just more bulk and stats in general. I actually prefer the Sacred Bow because this allows her to sustain herself with heals if she does get hit, and it makes her immune to afflictions like stuns or burns or freeze, things that can really harm her ability to evade. Since her main weakness here is True Strike attacks, we're gonna have to counter that with blinds. So the next two supportive units that we're gonna be pairing her up with will both be able to supply this blind. The first one is gonna be a Feather Bow. Feather bows are kind of cool because their Shining Light passive skill is actually pretty powerful. If an enemy attacks before they land the hit, the Feather Bow will be able to activate this passive skill with the use of 2 PP, so that way they can blind all enemies in a row. Blinding up to 3 enemies with one skill is amazing. It's absurdly good, but that's not all. The Feather Bow also has the Photon Arrow attack, which hits 2 enemies and inflicts a 50% physical debuff to the enemy and also passive seal during the day, helping to augment Yunifi's already crazy damage. While the bow and most of her accessories can be whatever you want it to be, I would recommend highly getting as much AP and PP on her as possible. Once you get to the late game, the Soothing Plume is actually a really good item for her, making her able to do supportive heals as well, thanks to the 2 AP skill, Healing Wind, which is nice because she's not going to be spending PP to do this, saving the blinds for Yunifi to do the counterattack thing with safely. This team has 2 ways to inflict blindness, so we're gonna have to make sure to put Shining Light on only against enemies who are attacking who are not blinded already, so that way we don't waste PP. And speaking of the second unit who can blind, we're gonna throw in a Druid not only for the blindness but also for the damage mitigation, because they can decrease and debuff enemies' attack, making it so that way Yunifi doesn't die in one hit if she does get hit. At level 25, Druids get an amazing start of combat passive skill in Cursed Swamp.
Huh? What are you doing in my swamp?
Which not only lowers an enemy's initiative and evasion, but also their PP, if they are a cavalry unit, which is something Yunifi might struggle with as an infantry unit herself. For the weapon, of course, we're going to have to abuse the Dustbound Staff, an AoE team-wide attack that blinds enemies for the cost of 3 AP. Druids are the best users of the Onyx Pendant, a pendant that gives plus 2 AP and plus 2 PP for a minus 15 in all stats, since they don't really use anything outside of initiative and AP and PP. That paired up with your best plume should give some decent speed, so that way your turn 1 blindness will be active before Yunifi can get hit. Because of how we have this set up, we're gonna have 2 extra PP not being used, which makes it perfect to equip your Druid with the Lapis Bell, giving passive gift to anybody on the team. But we're gonna pair it up to a front row archer, which is gonna be Yunifi. Passive gifts gives an extra PP whenever the ally uses a passive skill. So when Yunifi counters or does a follow-up attack, she gets another PP for free, allowing her to do another counter or passive attack. Lots of immense value here. The 4th unit on this team is gonna be Dinah, a werefox with high mobility and also a very fun passive skill. Whenever an enemy is debuffed for the cost of 2 PP, Dinah can launch an unguardable attack that ignores 50% of the target's defense. When something like Cursed Swamp activates or anything else from the Druid or the Feather Bow, bam, she's going to be able to attack. And she's also able to follow up on an ally's attack with Shadow Pursuit that deals a bit less damage than a Weakness Hunter but inflicts blindness to help support that Yunifi tankiness. As for her active skills, all of Dinah's active skills are very nice at being disruptive, not only with just poison, but also with guard seals and passive seals. They're very, very impactful in terms of letting Yunifi or the rest of your team do what they want. As for her weapons and accessories, this is the unit you want to dump all your damage into, with one caveat. She's very PP hungry, just like Yunifi, and you want to make sure she has as much as possible, so that way she can launch Weakness Hunter multiple times. Dina also being a frail unit, I generally prefer high crit rate and crit damage on this unit just because we're going to be piercing defense anyways, and if we land a crit on a pierce defense attack, we're going to be doing so much damage. For our last unit slot, we want something defensive and offensive, so this could be Elaine, this could be Benrengaria, it could even be Hilda from the earlier build, but what is needed is some kind of offensive presence that makes good use of AP and really pressures the enemy. For this video, we're going to be using Nigel, a unit that you get really late into the game, but he's pretty cool. He has a lot of AoE attacks that burn enemies, and he has an AP PP loop in his Burning Edge and advanced cover setup. Burning Edge, if you hit an enemy who's burning already, he'll get PP, and whenever he covers an ally, he gets AP. His 2 AP AoE attack also does burn, and is also a ranged attack, meaning he can poke backlines, and if an enemy sweeps at the entire row that he's in with Yunifi or just himself, Phantom Counter will activate, burning the enemy and taking away their debuff, and this is a true hit, so it can't miss. And to make him even more annoying, even if he only has 1 AP, he can attack a row of units and stun them. He's already an insane unit, but but then at the end of the battle, Parting Death activates. It attacks a single enemy and inflicts death blow, so it instantly kills somebody if they're below 50% HP. So make sure to set this to target the lowest HP enemy. For his items, Sacred Sword is an amazing frontline sword because it gives you affliction immunity, and anytime an active skill is activated by the unit, they get 20% HP back, which is amazing sustain. For his shield, I picked the Heaven's Mirror Great Shield for a couple reasons. The simple reason is that reflex magic is pretty dank, but the more big brain reason is that this team lacks magic damage. Even though we have a lot of defense shreds and defense ignores, we can't snap our fingers and have magic happen. I do want to note that Yunifi can deal magic damage to armored units, but just in case, this is how we do magic damage. Even in expert play, this lack of magic damage is not going to matter too much, but that's a very strict conditional that a lot of tanky units will not fulfill. And even though his AP and PP generation is already really good, he just has a lot of really good skills, so maxing out on his AP and PP is a great way to go. These teams are a bit unorthodox, but they are a lot of fun. Give them a try and let me know what you think. If this video helped you generate new ideas, leave a like and consider subscribing for more Unicorn Overlord content. And if you have any fun or degenerate team comps you'd like to share, leave it in the comments below. I love to read them. For less wacky builds with crazy potential, check out this video on screen right now. My name is Varsona, and I'll see you in the next video.